Yeah. We're fast and everyone's bringing, you got the entire community working on. Don't move that, don't. It's like half the town. Yeah. It was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, warm me up, it was complaining now, it's still hot. Wait.
So.
It cools down.
Mm-hmm. For sure. No, that's no, she's Parks. We're doing Parks. Are we doing? No, or yeah, we are doing. We're doing the planning committee too, and Parks.
For a podcast.
It is 6 o'clock. Yeah. All right, it is 6 o'clock and I will bring this regular meeting of the Dunsmuir City Council to order for June 20th, 2024. If everyone could please stand for the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I do request that everyone here tonight, if you could please put your cell phones on either vibrate or silent, we would greatly appreciate it. And Wendy, if you'd like to lead us off with a roll call.
Councilmember Lucchese,
Here.
Councilmember Bryan,
Present.
Councilmember Deutsch,
Here.
and Councilmember Keisler, and Mayor Clarno.
Here. All right, we do have a special presentation tonight from the Dunsmuir Rail Yard Cleanup Project. Dustin, I'll let you introduce it and then we'll, okay.
Tonight we have Anna and Eric from Cal Fish and Wildlife. They're kind of the liaisons for the project and they're here to present.
You're gonna tell us it's all done, right?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks. All right, sounds good. All right, my name is Eric Laughlin. I'm a public information officer with California Fish and Wildlife, and we're this project is being done through a unified command of agencies. So we have Fish and Wildlife, the Water Board, the EPA, and the company Union Pacific. So it kind of makes it it's a good system to kind of make collective decisions. So we'll start with the update though. We got underway earlier this month. The water levels came down enough, so we were able to get started with the work. The primary work that's been going on is the in-river isolation barrier installation. Anna and I have been putting up some river safety messaging. We want to make sure that people in the river, the boaters and the kayakers, know what's going on so they can kind of avoid that area.
Where will that sign, or is it gonna be a sign that we talked about before there for that?
We put signage pretty much at different locations upstream. There's one sign that kind of has the basics of the project, and then there's another sign that's kind of a more of a like an orange triangle, like, you know, exit here, that kind of thing. But yeah, we'll show you a picture of it. So the barrier, it's probably going to take another 3 to 4 weeks to kind of complete that. It's basically, we call it an in-river isolation barrier. It's roughly 1,000 feet in length, and it will remain in the river throughout the wet excavation and restoration activities that are going to continue through the year and into next year, the restoration. A silt curtain and an oil spill boom are being installed on the inside of this IRIB, and that's basically to contain any petroleum that would come up as they're doing the wet excavation. So our goal is to protect the river. That's why this barrier is there while they're doing the wet excavation work. Here's an aerial view of the work that's been going on in the last few weeks. You can see the barrier is probably about 50% complete, so we should have that within the next month or so, and then we can start the wet excavation.
Excuse me, I'm back on that last one. Just for reference, I'm trying to figure out when we were there the last time, the whole council, where would that have been? Where would we have been standing when we're looking down and they were doing all the sand at that point? Is that where that,
That's way further north.
Yeah, I think that's
further up?
up to the north is where they already kind of did some of the fill.
Okay, so this is all since then, and this is all good news and moving along. I just wanted to make sure that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, definitely.
Or another way to describe it is would our old Public Works building be just to the right of this
Correct.
picture? Yeah, just there. Okay.
Makes sense.
Did they take the large wall out?
So here's the signage that's up. We have the basic, sign that kind of talks about what's going on as of June 3rd, and then we have the orange sign, 9th of the square, and that's letting people know. We actually just put a new one up today down by the bridge, and so we want to make sure people that are in the water know that there's the capacity. And they'll stay, the signage will stay up, through the project. So we're waiting until, everything's done to remove those signs. The wildlife exclusion fencing and protection protocols. So we have fencing installed around the work site with exclusion fabric, it's called, attached to the fencing with smaller animals. This screen will be used to cover the open wet excavation areas when the crews are not working in an area or overnight on the weekends. We also have beam cameras set up to view the open pools of water and any standing oil. So our goal is to, protect the wildlife as this project continues. The wet excavation, so it's probably going to be completed by the end of the year. The southern action area is kind of the focus, and then the excavated material is being loaded onto the trucks. So we'll be loaded onto the trucks or rail cars and properly disposed of off-site. We have a dust control plan that includes water trucks, tackifier, and tarps that will be used to kind of manage the fugitive dust. And the traffic control plan is pretty similar to what we had last year. But these are some pictures from last year, so just to kind of show, how that contaminated soil will be loaded into the rail cars. So the retaining wall, let's see, they're calling it from 1700 to 700 or 700. So the removal of that section will proceed once we get the barrier in the river completed. The retaining wall between 450 and 7, which is more south, will be left in place permanently. So part of the wall is going to come out, and part of it's going to stay in.
Just out of curiosity, is the further south or the further north part staying in?
I believe it's the further south.
Yeah, the north part's coming down, the south part's staying, right?
I just wanted to clarify that.
So there's some more photos of what's been going on the last few weeks. You can see the installation of the barrier there. And so once the wet excavation, all the impacted soil is removed, the excavated areas will be backfilled with clean imported material. They'll be compacted, graded to the final shoreline configuration. After the backfill and final grading, revegetation will be completed, and that's going to include native river vegetation that's planted. So everything that'll be there will be, native to the river, to the shoreline, which will benefit the habitat. And that's it. If you have any questions, we also have technical experts here that can kind of go a little deeper into the weeds, but
I do have a question. At one point, there was talk about the idea that parts of that property might be turned over to other use. That's one of the questions. And then the other question is, are there plans being made to have a particular spot where the fishing folks go down, fishers go down? Is that part of what you're doing, or how do we look at that in the overall scheme of things?
yes, so the restoration plan addresses, basically once the area is cleaned and excavated. The habitat is what we're concerned about. So we want to make sure that, we don't have exotic plants And so beyond that, that would probably be a question for the company, as far as, public access. But we're focused on kind of, removing the contaminated soil, restoring it to, a native landscape.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Mhm.
Yeah, from the very beginning, full restoration of the shoreline through this section has been
Uh-huh.
a really important factor
Uh-huh.
in building the confidence in the community that we're not just going to have more of the same.
Mhm.
We did a tour last year and it was seriously expressed on the city's behalf that we're very interested, and maybe I'm just kind of going off imagination here, but the largest part of the wall that used to sustain, at the very southern end of this project, just past where our public works yard used to be, is that not coming down? Because that's definitely a break from the trust the city's had when it comes to a restoration of a native shoreline through there. And I know the railroad probably prefers doing as little as possible, although they've been cooperative, with these orders. Could we just get more clarity on that? Because that's a huge disappointment that we're leaving part of the problem in from the town's perspective.
Yeah, Greg is one of the engineers that's contracted to work on the project. He could probably give you a better answer than I could. I know that they have been, evaluating all the different, wildlife, environmental data as well. It's a decision that, had a lot of feedback from the water board and from Fish and Wildlife, but Greg could probably address that a little. If you want to step up here, because it's being recorded.
Okay, so we looked at the roundhouse wall, and it really is, it's the back of the roundhouse, and it was a wall that supported, all the locomotives and everything. It's really stout. And to demolish that wall, we essentially have to go into the river and all the, that's real hot spot for fishing. You'd lose that. And as an environmental engineer, I saw taking that wall out is going to cause more environmental damage to the river than leaving it in. And we can leave it in because there's not a lot of oil present that really needs the wall to come out. The wall is really a barrier there. And behind the wall, we're going to put in a slurry wall that's really going to prevent anything from penetrating that wall system. So that's a technical solution used, worldwide. I've probably worked on 30 plus projects where we use that solution. But turning that wall out, you definitely, the only way to do it, you would lose everything in the river in front of them.
Would you not eventually gain a more natural riverfront? I mean, the whole point of restoration, the town's focus.
Yeah, so to get back to, your question about access, the plan is that entire shoreline up to that roundhouse wall will be down to the water. And there are plans, we have drawings right now, and we're looking for flatter rocks to be able to build steps down to the water line. What will be on the other side of the roundhouse wall will still be that walkway that's in front of it. I don't want to speak for UP. I don't know what, how they're going to allow access.
Yeah.
People access it anyway. But really money aside, to me, it's environmentally the best solution is to leave that wall in, leave the fishing spots the way they are down in front of that wall. And, technically we could prevent anything in the future from penetrating.
Yeah, and I think you maybe highlighted some of my concern. The money aside comment, I appreciate your perspective on that, but I knew Union Pacific expressed to me that the cost of tearing down the wall was something they didn't want to add to an already expensive project, and I understand that from their perspective. You'd mentioned there's not very much oil, and the town's experienced 100 years of oil seepage into our beautiful river.
Right.
We're not, I don't know. That's not a very strong statement. Could you maybe elaborate on what not a very lot of oil is?
I believe in that area, they've only seen sheen on the water maybe 4 or 5 times in that area.
Yeah, except from,
You know, sheen, you don't need a whole lot to create sheen. It could be, you know, a few tablespoons of oil.
Mhm.
So, and we've already dug behind it. We've dug exploratory trenches behind it, looking for oil. We haven't found it. So we don't think it's the source right there. That it probably came.
how
from-
far is it from a source? Because I saw a pit that was about, looked like 20, or maybe I'm a little off, but yeah, about maybe 20 to 30 yards from that wall. There was a big pit.
I would say at least because we dug all the way back to the roundhouse. And that soil is fairly clean. Compared to all the soil,
Yeah.
under the old building and north of that, where everything's just black and it's been marinating in oil for, a century.
Okay, I recently had the pleasure of reading a feasibility study for Lake Siskiyou from the sixties, and it was really fascinating, very thorough, even back then, with less knowledge than we have today. But I was very impressed by them predicting the failure point of the dam that they'd built, because, they knew where the weakest point was. Still enough to build, but, at some point in 300 years, we're probably gonna have to deal with that failure point. Considering this is obviously the best knowledge we have today, in your professional opinion, what's the weakest point in this remediation project that could lead us back here 100 years from now or 200 years from now with contamination getting in the river?
The weakest point. It would be down to unknowns. Just areas that we just don't know about, but we have a pretty good history of where all the old oil tanks were and the oil sumps.
Mhm.
And it's really proving as we dig where those sumps are and where the tanks were are the dirtiest parts of the site.
Yeah.
And our technology, of putting in what we call the barrier sand,
Mhm.
it's been proven over this last year, when we see oil, it does not penetrate that sand. So all that sand we're hauling in is going to hold oil in place.
Yeah.
And not get to the river.
Well, it's a very impressive plan. I'm very happy that we have Jacobs designing it for UP. But am I correct in understanding we're kind of the first in the world version of this sand compaction? So we're the test case for whether it lasts 50 years, 100 years?
I'd have to ask the engineers to see if we are the first.
Yeah, but it's fairly cutting edge in that it doesn't capture oil now, but we haven't seen examples of this being done 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Hence the town's concern that, as long as UP is having to address it, we'd love for it to be something close to a permanent solution.
Right. So you could think about it this way. All of our models showed that all we needed was an 8-foot width of sand to prevent the oil getting from our west edge of the excavation to the river, 8 feet wide. But if you look from our westernmost excavation to the river, it's more like 70 or 80 feet. So you have all that extra distance of sand that's in there that hopefully will, and our engineers are saying all we needed were 8, but we have like 80 feet.
Yeah, down to
70 or
bedrock.
80 feet, yeah, down to bedrock.
And then as regards the southern portion of the wall, which I'm not an environmental scientist, but I've heard from a lot of different people on, perspectives of whether you keep things in rivers or remove them, cause temporary damage now for a, more pure future. Could I hear from maybe Fish and Wildlife regarding, did you model what the habitat would be for people or for wildlife without that wall? Because I'm assuming a giant concrete wall is not something that they would normally encounter in a wild river.
I don't know that we've modeled anything for fishies, you're.
Fish or wildlife.
Fish or wildlife. I don't know that we've modeled anything for fish specifically, I'm not.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's not
Yeah.
modeled.
Yeah.
But he's an
Yeah.
engineer. We do have some river modelers, I don't know if they particularly, oh, sorry, Blake. You're killing me. So the answer is no, probably not. I don't know that we modeled anything for fish specifically. I mean, Greg can correct me if that's not true.
Yeah, I don't think we modeled it for fish, but what we did realize, and talking to the locals that fish there, there's a hole right in front of the wall, of the roundhouse wall.
Mhm.
And they claim it's the best fishing spot in Dunsmuir. And yeah, and
I
to take
appreciate,
the wall out, you'd have to fill that hole in. So.
I appreciate that we might-
Could model, what happens if that hole gets filled, but the fish, I'm sure will find a better spot to be.
yeah, well, it sounds like we're not fully committed to the restoration of the shoreline to its native structure if we're willing to not model what it would look like all the way and maybe see if there's more of a benefit. I'm not saying there, maybe
Well, what
the-
we did model is what happens if that wall comes out. And it requires a lot of engineering because of the butterfly bridge. It changes the whole river dynamics.
Mhm. Okay, I can
And,
imagine.
and that's not complete because we're not taking the wall out. We just, with Walnut there, it really, who knows what has to happen at the butterfly bridge.
So the butterfly bridge and any liability with that structure was potentially a factor in the decision on UP's part to keep the wall or not?
It's only a factor with the water board, and I believe wildlife may have looked at it too.
Yeah,
That it changes that whole dynamics of the river from the roundhouse wall down to the butterfly bridge and possibly beyond.
and the change wasn't viewed as a restoration, but just I
No,
mean,
it changed the river dynamics. Because right now, the way the water comes, it creates an
smacked it
eddy,
into the
right?
wall. Yeah,
Well, no, it goes past the wall and creates an eddy and it comes back.
Mhm.
And that's where that fishing hole is. And so if you change all that, downstream of that, we haven't really modeled, how much of that area needs to be redone.
yeah.
We just don't know. Yeah.
And the main concern here is that the cost savings is driving the decision. I'm not saying I know that it's the opposite, but I'd like to see evidence that it wasn't purely cost driven decision to keep that wall in there, because it seems to just not fit with the overall project of tear out all the contaminants, restore to its native, shoreline throughout there, from the town's perspective.
Sure, I'd be happy to follow up on that.
Yeah.
There's a working group that worked on all this and made all those decisions, so I'm happy to follow up on that and get some answers. on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and if there's any opportunity, and I'm one council member, I'm sorry to hog the floor. I'd love for the city to have some input in that, at least know why the decision was made, and maybe we agree with it, but you guys will leave here after this project is complete, and I'm sure it'll hold oil for a number of decades, probably centuries, let's hope, but whatever's left, our city, our community, we're here for the long haul. We're gonna live with what you leave. If the focus and resources are here to fix it, we really want to make sure it's done to standards that are going to work best for the community going forward. So thank you. And I didn't mean to be hard. This is very important for our community. I appreciate your efforts.
And one thing to add too about having this, the unified command, we call it the joint agency involvement. I mean, we have a geologist from the water board that's part of the unified command. We have an environmental scientist from Reading that is up here a lot from Fish and Wildlife. So there is a lot of input that comes together, and there's consensus, there's disagreements sometimes, and that's the whole point of the unified command. It works well because you have agency oversight and the company with a seat at the table. So, and this is the case anywhere in California with oil spills. The big ones we had recently down in Huntington Beach. I mean, it was the Coast Guard, the Fish and Wildlife, the company that spilled the oil, and it's a system that works pretty well. So.
And I do sit on as a city representative on the UC as well. So I have looked at all of these documents. I was not part of like the full on, approval of that, but I have seen the information and why we made the decision, or that UC decision. And a lot of it does go back to when you have to look at the pros and cons of everything. One thing to keep in mind is that a lot of these structures have been in for a pretty significant amount of time. And for wildlife and fish populations in particular, they do get used to certain patterns within the environment. And so that actually does, in a sense, become their natural environment, which if you want to have an ethics and like natural ecosystem
We'll get to the
versus
climate at
learn.
some point.
Yeah, the Klamath is a super interesting thing, but yeah, when you start looking at the hydrology of the river, one of the other issues was also increasing flood hazard. And so taking out the wall actually theoretically could increase flood hazard for the southern portion of the river. So that was another thing that was taken into account, is what are the potential flooding hazards that we may be increasing below that, which then that triggers a whole different level of review for flood hazard reduction within FEMA and Homeland Security for local hazards. So it's a multi-factor decision, and it's not just because, oh, it's, I understand the cost comment. But there are a lot of other things that go into it other than that.
Good to hear. All right. Councilmember Keisler.
So, if I understand, will pass the 100-year test over years. I don't think it's stressing that. My question is, I have two questions. Is the roundhouse still functioning?
Well, the roundhouse isn't, but the turntables used quite a bit. I mean, they still use the,
Turntable still is.
In use,
My
yeah.
understanding, it's like one of the only ones working, and
You will see people visiting the site, illegally walking onto UP property because they want to see the turntable.
okay.
The only
And-
turntable still used by
Is
Flat
that
One.
part of the wall?
No,
No.
That's
no,
not
but it's,
patented for
no,
none of that?
it's part of the old structure. So if you talk to old, railroad people that love railroads, they would love to see the roundhouse, the pictures of the old roundhouse. And I would recommend, if the wall stays in, maybe you build a plaque and some old photos of what the roundhouse looked like, because there were, I think, 26, 28 stations where, they turn and the locomotives would go in and they'd operate on them.
Right behind. There's a good picture behind you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you as far as the wall should stay for the fishing.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
you guys are talking about, when you're talking about planting. Now let's take consideration, some people are gonna be fishing. Right, and you wanna do the natural, plant the natural, okay? For us fishermen, could you maybe not plant blackberry bushes? Please?
Probably.
Please?
Yeah, we'll let our, yeah.
We'd
Oh,
be
sorry,
appreciative. Thank you. And you guys are doing a really good job. From my perspective, it looks good. I appreciate all the hard work that's going into that. And I'm sure, we're all looking out for, we are gonna leave. Bye, we won't see you. Hopefully I never see you again, nothing personal. Go on Costco, whatever, but,
Come on up on vacation whenever you want.
yeah, and for nutrition. But, that's what we're really looking out for, is our children and our children's children. And it's important. So if we somewhat of, jerk or whatever, sitting up here asking you questions, it's because we want to know. And we appreciate your time, right? Thank you.
Just to clarify, the way the roundhouse is it's like a horseshoe around the turntable. So that's why if you look at it from here and it's going out there, basically, that's why the thing is close to the river, because it came around the turntable. So that straightens that out. The one thing I'd like to kind of poke for the future is just a thought, and that is that I did hear early on in this whole process, somebody mentioned the idea that part of the territory down there might be converted, since the railroad isn't using it, to some other use. And I would just think that if we keep that in mind as we go forward, that could turn out to be a really big resource if we could get a slice of that area down there by the river. So
Like a community park or something.
well, something by the river, because everyone says we don't have anything really where people accept down all the way down by the park, but somewhere downtown where people that are in town can walk down there and say, oh, that's the river. So that's one of the things a lot of people are looking for. And I think that there might be an opportunity if we keep that in mind as the relationship with UP evolves over time here. So just a point.
Anything else?
You heard that, right? You downtown, walk to the river to a park.
I wrote it down.
Really?
I got it. I got it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move on to item number 4, public comment. If you have any general public comment for city business, comment on the presentation we just heard, or comment on any item on the consent agenda, now is your time. If you do have comments for anything under item number 11, new business, there will be dedicated public comment for each of those items. So I do ask that you save your public comment on those items for those times. Any member of the public who wants to speak will have 3 minutes. I will give a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Please state your name and address for the record at the beginning. We'll do anyone who wants to speak in person first and then move on to Zoom. And with that, I will open up public comment for anyone who would like to come up to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Spagnolo. I live at 4120 Edith in Dunsmuir. I've been a resident for about 36, 38 years. I'm just going to read this because it's easier. Here I am again, 5 months after my car illegally taken from my property. Again, I ask why I'm not on the agenda. I believe you're not professional-minded people and not doing your job. If you put me on the agenda, you have to do something. You have to take action. That is your job. Meaning the truth will surface. As to the incomplete steps of procedure in doing Mark Allen, the incomplete steps of procedure the dog catcher Mark Allen didn't do before he took my car. Besides the fact that he had an agreement, him and I had an agreement about the rims to come off my car, and he broke it. He didn't have to. He also had 14 days to complete the abatement, and it stated so in the abatement warrant, whatever you want to call it, in which he acted on his own devious illegal ways. This is the truth, and you'd have to do something about this if you put me on the agenda. People aren't born evil. People are not born greedy. Yet somewhere along the line, in them, the civil, moral, just, and right thing to do leaves a person. I believe this is what your employee, Mark Allen, is and needs to be held accountable. And also, in looking up all the codes and everything, the burden of proof is on whoever the director is. And the director could be either the employee, to be an ordinance enforcer, or it can be the planning commission and so on. So I never got a chance to have my say so. And he swears he did, and he did not. I can bring you stacks of notes and stacks of books and files and everything that I have had, at every meeting that I went to and every letter that I received and everything I did on it. I might scribble and half time you can't read it, but I know it's there. And it's there. And I never got my chance to have my hearing. So he has to be accountable for that. And I still want to know why I'm the only one who had an abatement warrant to have my decent little Geo destroyed.
30 seconds.
And personally, I want my car back. I want an apology, and I want some action taken. Because pretty soon I'm going to go to small claims and sue somebody. It's not right what he's done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Arth, 5859 Sacramento Avenue in the beautiful city of Dunsmuir. Council members and city manager. I am here tonight cognizant of the reality that the city, if it's on time, should be on the cusp of adopting a new 2-year budget for the fiscal years 24, 25, 25, 26. And I think that period is going to be extremely important for the city of Dunsmuir, its residences and its businesses. So I take a considerable amount of pride working with the city council and prior city managers to produce the 2-year budget for fiscal year 21-23 with the notion, if you look at the preface to the budget, there are 8 objectives that were mutually adopted by the city council and the city manager. One of those, bullet number 3, is to continue full-time code enforcement, including vigorous work toward compliance with the vacant
and distressed building ordinance. I don't think there has been much progress on that goal, and I think it's critical that the city no longer allow the broken windows, the brown paper with the flies in the window, the falling down facade. You have to be more aggressive in achieving this goal. Equally important, on behalf of the city manager and the staff, there are 15 objectives talking about economic development of the airport, talking about fixing our sidewalks, talking about all of the things that a professional staff should be prioritizing. Please don't go backwards. I think it's excellent that you're going to reach out to the community in July with the town hall meeting. I think it's excellent that you're going to survey us, I hope, if this comes through. But at the end of the day, as citizens and business
30
owners,
seconds.
we could talk to you, but at some point you have to make the decisions on behalf of all of us. What are you going to focus on? What second tier, third tier, and the budget has to follow. So I urge you all to do your very best work in the months leading up to the adoption of the budget on behalf of all of us. Thank you.
All right, anyone else in person? Seeing no one, we will move on to Zoom, and I do see that Treasurer Rubino has his hand up. All right, and with that, you can go ahead. You should be unmuted and ready to talk.
Yeah, Council, I was just wondering if perhaps we could work on agenda items. I've seen one recently that seems like it would be fairly significant to the public on perhaps getting a tax on a November ballot, which would be, a lot of work in a very short time. And so we'd want to be very forthright with the notice of our intentions. But often, we're getting these agenda items that don't have much information behind them. Maybe we can work together on getting a little bit more clear agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other further public comment tonight? Seeing none, I will close public comment. All right, and with that, we'll move on to council and staff comments, and Sergeant Ortiz, if you'd like to lead us off tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. For the month of May, the sheriff's office provided 290 hours of service. We answered 161 calls for service. We had 18 cases, issued 5 citations, 3 traffic related to warrants. We had a felony arrest as well as a misdemeanor arrest. 14 incidents of disturbing the peace. 22 patrol checks, 11 security checks, 26 school checks, 0 traffic collisions, 4 thefts, 4 trespassing incidents, 18 traffic stops, and 4 welfare checks. While the month of May didn't have anything too amazing happen, we did recently have railroad days. That went overall, I think it went pretty good. Seemed to me like most people were having fun, and we did have a couple dust ups. We had one at the Fountain and one there were out of town folks, and one up just north of the south of the 800-foot bridge. There were some local folks that had a bickering fight over a drum set. Other than that, I think it was pretty good. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. City Manager Reef.
All right, so it's been a busy couple of weeks for Dunsmuir. So we had also had the softball tournament in town. Missed that one. Yeah. Oh, thanks. That was both events were both extremely busy and great for the community. So I believe there was 32 games in 3 or 4 days last weekend. So heard there was a lot of fun. I didn't make it, but I saw the traffic and it was great.
Mossbury Falls. So I'll be hopefully bringing an item forward on July 18th. Just got an email today. The link for donations is now active. And so we're working to have up some signage. Hopefully have some signage by July 4th at strategic locations within town that will have a QR code linked directly to the Community Foundation's donation page. And it has Blake and Stephen have worked diligently to ensure we kind of capture the whole of the holistic look of the project and with some good information on there. So that'll be coming out soon. Attended the solid waste JPA today and meeting up in Wairika. The whole county is kind of scrambling for the recycling component, the blue bag component. And so we're just trying, the county's bringing on new staff on Monday. So we'll have new people diligently working on the JPA side, but also recycling. So that's one thing we got to look at. The new contract for Recology to operate the butte transfer or the transfer stations is looking like there's going to be a little bit of a delay. They were supposed to take over July 1, but they're had to back and forth with the contract. So it looks like we might be September 1. But that is going to lead to once that contract's ironed out, somewhere between $15 to $20 increases in tipping fees. And so with our 218 coming forward, we did project for that. And so the 218 will be also on the initial advertisement for that should be on the July 18th meeting as well. We got a notification from Cal Fish and Wildlife. I know they're not here, but not related to the project. So there is a downed tree in the river that is causing a hazard somewhere in the Tollendali area. I haven't seen it, but we got that notification and that's we did post that
I
on
can
the
speak
web.
to it. It's actually north of Tollendali between the two parks. An old fir tree, large. They cut it down and it went directly across the river, full
Okay.
span.
And that leads me to my next subject. So Cal Fire has been working with Cal Fish and Wildlife. So there's significant dead trees in that area between Tollendali and the city park. And I believe they cut down 27 trees last week or this week. I don't even know. One of the days in the last week. And we're working to help them kind of get some of that out of the way if need be. City Hall, we're going to close it to the public on July 5th, just so we can allow some staff, if they want to take the day off, they can. We've received some complaints about the Belknap Fountain, and we've been dealing with a significant amount of challenges with vandalism to the Belknap Fountain. We just recently, and some of this that, the sheriff's department's been dealing with, but I just want to put that out in the public that if you see somebody there, most of them are not from in town. We've been trying to keep them out of there because we've been seeing an increased amount of vandalism. And then as to Peter's comment, we are in the middle of our 2-year budget. So we will bring amendment forward for the second half of the 2-year budget. That'll be once we get the fiscal year started. And then the survey for downtown will be in the utility bills and it will be posted online shortly.
Thank you very much. And
Question?
Finance Committee.
I have a question.
Yes.
So how are we with the temporary building official?
I have had one response to an inquiry and I have another outreach on Monday. So it's in progress.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I just want to do a quick update to say, in the consent agenda that hopefully will be adopted here shortly, contains 8 checks. If you add those 8 checks to 2 other checks, that's 10 total grants that have been granted out to small businesses. So I just want to say kudos to council. I think this is back in prior council in 2021. Maybe you guys were all here in 21. I don't know. I can't remember. But it was back in 21. It was first initially awarded to us. So I just want to say that that's great news. I just want to provide kudos. I want to say a special thanks to this like Hollywood
That guy right
producer
there.
guy over here sitting down.
Yeah.
Quentin Gaddy was essential in administrating this program. He was amazing. And then Len and Mark Foreman both were on the loan committee and they were instrumental in just getting together and going through each individual applicant, vetting them, doing all the necessary things that were needed. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to council for doing that. I'm sure the small businesses are going to be very much appreciative. And then hopefully we can try and get more of these programs in the future.
Do you have a total on how roughly total amount of?
I'm gonna go with like 170,000. I think it's about 170,000. I was looking for confirmation over there, but you know, cool, Mr. Cool is. It's, so they were about 20,000 each. So if there's 10, but some were less than 20,000.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
So way to go.
And with that, we'll move on to council comment and we'll start with Councilmember Lucchese today.
I have nothing.
All right, with that, we'll move on to Councilmember Keisler.
I just gotta say that, it was really nice to see the soapbox return back to railroad days, to watch the kids have fun. Good job to Kevin and Joey. In the soapbox, I mean, the softball, there were a lot of people here for that softball tournament. And I went over and I watched the game, some games, a couple days, and then I could actually, me and Blaze would sit on the deck and watch the game and have dinner. It was really cool. At the last council meeting, I asked about my buddy Dale. And the council gave me the go ahead to reach out to the family and get verbiage to what we would like to put on a plaque. If I might, I'd like to read that. The plaque will say, in memory of Dale Faulkner, loving husband, father, son, brother, and a friend of many. It's got dates from 64 to 23. Dedicated many hours of hard work as a maintenance supervisor. Dunsmuir City Park for 18 years. Dale is missed. So I would like to make a motion that we move forward or instruct the city manager to proceed with making the arrangements to get this plaque made. We'll decide later. We'll all agree where we're gonna put it. It's been mentioned that maybe we'll make the sprinkler system the honorable sprinkler system. Sprinklers.
Let's put it on the valve box.
For you.
Yes, it was.
Anyway, I appreciate it, and you just let me know what the cost is on that plaque. I'll cover it. We want to do this. I think we owe it to them. So thank you. Once again, I hate it when my friends die. I got nothing else.
Councilmember Deutsch.
Just one thing, I have been listening to over time, concerns about, appeals and the process, and I, have been making a habit of, reaching out to my friend Chat GPT to ask questions. And, so when I did, I asked, what do cities have as processes for, appeals, both before an action and after an action? And it came up with some interesting information, and I just like the idea of at a future agenda item, looking at that whole situation just from the standpoint of what processes we have in place and what processes might improve overall the experience. So that's what I'm looking for from there. That's all I have.
All right, Vice Mayor Brian.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to just congratulate the Sheriff's Department and City Hall and staff for successful railroad days and softball tournament. I want to thank the community organizers, the group that calls themselves the Homegrowns, and everyone else involved with that. It's been a tremendous 3-year effort to get to that point. I've heard there were teams from as far away as Vancouver at the event. I live only a couple blocks away, so I actually caught probably about 10 of the 32 games. But the best part was seeing so many old faces, people you know well, or you just see them around town from time to time. But instead of home at our TVs, we were there together in person, watching a game in the Babes Field. So I'm very appreciative of that effort. And I do want to commend city manager, public works director and staff. I talked with the organizer and he thought the process of working with the city on the field this year was very smooth, and they're appreciative of it looking its finest in many years. But but still want more to come. So they look forward to working with us in the future.
Mike assures me he could do that 3 or 4 times a year, so I'm encouraging it.
Okay, well, he did also let me know that there's a long waiting list of teams getting into the tournament now. So hope for a great future there. I want to bring up an issue, and maybe it's already been addressed because I have certainly mentioned it in the past. But I had the opportunity to go on the Hedge Creek Trail about a week ago with my dog on a walk, and I don't go there very often except for midweek because it's so crowded now. And sure enough, I asked people who were willing to talk with me where they came from, people from all over the country, even one out of the country. And you get to the end of it, and I always recommend people go to the viewing platform where they can see the river, the mountain, et cetera. And our tiny little viewing platform fence was vandalized a little bit over a year ago. I don't know why someone would tear it apart and spray paint it, but it wouldn't be very expensive to fix it. And I know it's been on the list of things to do, but we get tens of thousands of people a year going to Hedge Creek. For a lot of them, until we work on our marketing efforts, this is all of Dunsmuir they're going to see. And we want to expand, obviously, with the Mossbury Trail. So I really wish we could prioritize, in the immediate future, while summer is in progress, getting that fixed up so it just looks professional and nice, or removing it if that seems to be too big of an ongoing process. So I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of it.
It is on the schedule.
Perfect.
I think we're gonna have a contractor take care of it because we've just been pretty busy trying to prepare for railroad days and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I
But it
appreciate
is on the schedule to get repaired.
And it's not an important functional piece of the city, but I think it's a really important symbolic piece to have that trail looking at its best in the summer.
Yeah,
As we seek to build Mossbury.
Right. Additionally, we're working, we have some erosion issues there that we're trying to figure out how to minimize because of people walking off the trail. So we're working on signage for that. I too walked the trail last week, and it's in need of, I don't know, we got to do some different things. So we're looking at some signage and stuff like that to help with
Yeah,
that.
and I volunteered in high school to help build the extension of the trail. And I can tell you, we weren't designing a trail for the number of visitors we have currently. So that's probably part of the issues. Thank you on that. I wanted to speak briefly to the work that's being done, both with the Finance Committee and the Finance Committee tasked currently, Mayor Clarno and myself, with revamping the community promotions program. I just want to speak to it because ordinarily it would be decided about now. Council directed with the approval of last year that we refine the program and make it be a better program that kind of works for everyone, expectation wise, et cetera. Finance Committee's had 2 meetings on it. They've been very productive. A lot of good thoughts thrown about, and a kind of framework has been presented, but the full program is not in place. I have attempted to reach out to the individual applicants from prior years to let them know, but I haven't reached everyone yet. So if anyone's concerned about this, no, the program is not going away. It is going to be changed. I'm hoping to have it be before council and in place, say by mid-August would be the hope. And staff's gonna work on.
I have also reached out to a couple of the prior recipients to let them know about the changes and why the process hasn't started this year. And also just to tack onto that, I'm hoping the changes that are implemented are a positive change for the program for everybody. And get rid of some of the bumps that we ran into last year. So.
Yeah, and to be clear, at least as far as Finance Committee, no one's talking about defunding or changing that. It's the program's substance is going to move forward, but it'll be a more efficient process and will work better for the applicants and for the city. So I wanted to speak a little bit to a constant problem we have here at the city, which is we're trying to do all these things. I could list the 2 most important to me are downtown business district, code enforcement of vacant and distressed buildings, and the Mossbury Trail, both important to the community. But there's any number of programs we want implemented, grants we've received that we have to do the planning for, and we're constantly told we're at capacity when it comes to staff. I do respect that, but I would like, and I plan on introducing an agenda item on the future agenda when the time comes in item 12 to address and discuss increasing our capacity. I have an idea, and I'd also like us to look into reorganizing our project management process to just make sure, if we need to cut things as goals and save them for later, that's fine. But I would like us, if our problem's capacity and that's it, let's try to tackle it head on as a council and understand, what we're dealing with. So I just wanted to say that now, but I'll elaborate on future agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to keep mine relatively short. like several other people have already done, I'd just like to thank everyone who was involved in organizing and working on both Railroad Days and the softball tournament. I think that both were huge successes this year. Both brought a lot of people into the community, and we really put our best foot forward as a community with both of those events. Next, I'd just like to wish everybody a happy 4th of July. And on that note, anyone who's looked at the calendar would see that our next meeting falls on the 4th of July. So therefore, we will not be having that meeting, and our next meeting will be on July 18th. With that, we will move.
And congratulations to the Slam and Salmon.
Yes.
That's the kind of couple local boys that won that softball tournament. So congratulations.
All right, and with that, we will move on to item number 6, committee reports. Any committees meet since the last meeting? No. All right, with that, we do have a finance committee meeting on Monday with some pretty important items for the city's future, including reviewing the budget amendment and looking at taxes for the next election. So with that, anyone who would like to come to that is more than welcome to.
Question.
Yes.
When are those things for the election due?
So the tax measure is due August 8th to the county. So,
8th of July?
no, August 8th.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. So the intention is to hopefully, I spoke with John Kenny. I put a request in the end of May. I did not get a response. I talked to him personally on the phone on Tuesday, I believe it was, and directly asked that question because I'm kind of waiting on language from the attorney. And we will bring that before the finance committee and to the council on July 18th.
Okay, thank you.
And then just to elaborate on that a little bit for anyone who's curious about attending the finance committee meeting on this, it will kind of be just a general discussion on if we're going to do one, what type, because there are many different types, including TOT on hotel sales, to what extent. It's basically just a general discussion. So anyone who would like to attend that is more than welcome to. All right, and with that, we will move on to item number 7, approval. Oh, and that is Monday at 3 o'clock for anyone who is interested. We'll move on to item number 7, approval of the minutes for the special.
Approve the minutes, special meeting May 30th and a regular meeting of June 6th.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. That will move on to item number 8, consent agenda, which consists of one item, the check register for 6/1 to 6/14.
Make a motion to adopt consent agenda.
I'll second.
There we go.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. We have no public hearing tonight. We also have no old business tonight. So with that, we'll move on to item number 11, new business. There are 5 items on that tonight. We'll start with item number A, review of applicants and appointment of planning commissioners. City Manager Reef.
All right, Mayor and Council, we have the Planning Commission appointment for 4 positions that are currently open. And we do have 4 applicants for those positions. And so I believe Craig is here. I don't know if I see anybody else, but no, I think he's maybe online. So turn it over to you guys to ask questions and appoint.
Right. Let's start with KK then. And what page is that application on? If anyone's on that page?
Got 19 on 1. and
Yeah.
20.
7.
Craig is on 19,
18.
18.
18. All right, thank you so very much for coming tonight.
You bet.
You want to just start off a little bit on why you'd like to be on the planning commission and
Well, I've been on the planning commission since December of 17. Before that, I was on the marijuana task force when we developed all those nice fancy ordinances. Serving the public is what I like to do. Obviously, my main career is serving the public for the whole county. Getting involved in the city of Dunsmuir has been a pleasure. I was born and raised here and have enjoyed doing the planning commission since I've been on since then. So I'm here to continue if you have me.
Thank Thank you. Any questions from the council?
Thank you, Greg.
And by the way, I vote we keep the wall. I grew up on that wall.
Thank you so much. Uh-oh. All right, and then I believe I don't see any of the other applicants here tonight, so.
Yeah, my thought on that is normally we would like to press them to be here, but considering they're already serving on, I see no reason to put them, put something against them for not showing up tonight.
The only new applicant is Stephen Decatur.
Oh, okay.
Is he here?
He's not. He's on vacation in Colorado.
All right, with that, any council questions before we move into public comment?
Yeah, with the new applicant, well, I'm a little confused that we're appointing 4. Did we have somebody have to resign prior to their term? I thought we were on a 3 and 2 schedule.
So
3,
one
4.
of the applicants did not wish to reserve. There's 4 vacancies, 3 of the terming out planning commissioners reapplied, and one of them doesn't want to reserve, so.
Oh, sorry, am I incorrect? Is this a 7-person board or?
Seven.
7,
That's what
yeah.
I was at,
So
sorry.
it's a 4-3.
I did the same thing too, and then I had to go back and look. I was like, that's
My
a really
bad.
odd number.
I think what it was is it was the 5 and then the 2 that came in from the historic district might have been the extra 2.
No, I
Yeah, I think that's when they amended it back to 7.
think it's that the 2 planning commission meetings I've attended, there happened to be 5.
Mhm.
So,
All right, any other further questions before going to public comment? All right, I will open this item up for public comment for anyone who'd like to speak on it. I do ask that you limit your comment to this particular item. Same rules as general public comment, 3 minutes. I will give a 30-second warning, start with people in the room first and then move to Zoom. And with that, please state your name and address for the record and take us away.
Peter Arth, 5859 Sacramento Avenue. I think our planning commission is an underused asset to the future of our community. Nominally, Chairman Kay and another member of the planning commission are the 2 delegates that are supposedly overseeing and protecting our historic district. And we know from the testimony of Ron McLeod that that system does not work. We have issues with short-term rentals. We have issues with parking. We have issues with what we want our downtown to look like with the Cosmot report. I simply thank you all for serving. I wish the leadership of the city could coordinate with the leadership of the planning commission. So you use these citizens that, like you, serve for free, contribute their talents for the betterment of the community. And yet mostly what they do are lot line adjustments and advertising flags and colors of buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else?
Hi there. Alan Magana, 4116 Pine Street. I had some paperwork that I was hoping to get onto the agenda for the planning commission, and I was hoping that there would be a planning commission meeting available for the next round that was going to be canceled. So I was just hoping to get clarification on if it was possible to be able to be heard for my paperwork that's going to be turned in tomorrow for that planning commission. That's going to be for the following month. That is, as I've understood, canceled at the moment. And the one that was prior to is also canceled. So I just wanted to reiterate that I have some paperwork that I was going to be turning in hopefully. But I didn't turn in thinking that because the last meeting was canceled, that this following one would be put on the meeting schedule. And when I looked on it on the website, it wasn't. So I was just hoping to get some clarification on if there was possibility on there being a meeting for that next planning commission to be scheduled or not. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other further public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment on this item.
Can I address that public comment really quick?
Yes, I was hoping someone would.
Yeah. Turn your stuff into City Hall. You do not turn anything in at the planning commission meeting. So always turn your stuff in at City Hall because that's how the application process is processed. So they won't schedule you for a planning commission meeting until you drop that off at City Hall. Yes. Okay.
When is the next planning commission meeting?
Last couple planning commission meetings have been canceled due to lack of agenda items, but if Mr. Magana turns in his application, then once the planner processes the application, it'll be on the next agenda. Okay.
Thank you. All right, I'll open it up for discussion.
Move to approve all four.
Second.
All right, it has
I
been,
just wanted to ask a clarifying question real quick, just since it hadn't occurred to me that a city employee would apply for the planning commission. I assume that was vetted.
Yeah, we
Just so
just,
everyone knows.
yeah, we did discuss it. Stephen did approach me and asked me, and then we're just short on applicants, and he is a resident of the community, and
Yeah,
he is a planner. Different type of
I'm
planner.
absolutely honored that he wants to serve, and I'm appreciative. I just wanted to state for the record that that's
Mhm.
been looked into.
Like,
He's the hazard mitigation officer.
yeah, so I was gonna jump in. So similar to Mr. K, I myself serve on an elected board and I'm a government employee. So the way that the law is written is that as long as you don't have a conflicting office, and so because Mr. Decatur does not hold a position that relies on the planning commission for his job, he would not be holding a conflicting office. Now, if at any point an item were to arise where Mr. Decatur is involved with the formation. So for example, like working on a weed abatement ordinance,
yeah.
hazard mitigation stuff, he would then recuse himself from that item, but it would not preclude him from serving on other planning related items that are not in relation to his job.
But like hypothetically, the code enforcement officer could serve on the planning commission.
Correct. Yeah, that would code enforcement officers, law enforcement officers, and there's one other type of position where it's very not necessarily even planning staff. Sometimes it's not kosher. It's not ethically kosher within the profession itself to be a planning commissioner in your own city, because again, it would be considered a conflicting one in that. But if like say an associate planner who does not present to the planning commission wanted to serve on that planning commission, they theoretically could. Because again, it's basically where you're discerning your power. And so if you are a staff member who has direct power, but code enforcement, police, and there's another position that it's very explicit within the law that they cannot serve on other elected bodies, elected or appointed bodies.
Like I said, I'm absolutely thrilled he cares enough to serve. I just wanted to make sure everyone understood he does work for the city. Anything relating to his direct role as our hazard mitigation officer, essentially, he'll recuse himself for that. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, passes unanimously.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're the only one who showed up, so you get everybody's applause.
Yeah.
Hey, Craig, you may want to just say hello to Alan over there.
All right, with that, we will move on to item number B, Dunsmuir Parks and Recreation Board appointments.
All right, Mayor and Council, similar to the previous one, we have currently we have three positions up for the Park and Recreation District. There are 5 positions total. 2 are appointed by the county and 3 by the city. The 3 for the city are currently up for appointment, and we received 3 applications. And so I believe all 3 of those applicants are in the audience. So if you would like to interview, discuss, and appoint, and I would appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we'll start off with questions here and we'll just go within the order of which they are in the agenda, which is Ellen McCarron, followed by Katie O'Grady, and then Remy White. Ronnie, I apologize for that. All right. Yeah.
Why would you
So,
want to keep doing this?
Well, I'm pretty excited about the changes within the city and with the city park, the botanical gardens and the rec district. I see a streamlined future that hasn't existed with any one of those entities in 100 years. And so I want to get back on there and stay on there.
All right. Any other questions?
I do. And so I'm going to pose this question to all 3 of you. So I'm just going to kind of start with kind of just a narrative to set this up on why I'm asking this question, because I think you're all very lovely people. And so it is not personal. So as we've gone through the process of looking at the Parks and Recreation District and the city's relationships around park and recreation, I think one thing to call out for members of the general public is that the Parks District is basically its own government entity. It is able to leverage assessments, services, and make its own decision. That's why it has its own board. And so, I think both boards have done a good job of kind of clarifying that relationship, because previously, again, we'd get people here asking us to open the pool and we would have to explain we do not own the pool or manage the pool. And I think that's getting better in terms of understanding each of our roles. And so, moving forward, the Parks District has been pretty stagnant in terms of making really valuable decisions around the sustainability of the district. I mean, we've talked about this in our joint meetings around volunteers. Financing is a really big one as well, maintaining facilities and making sure they're up to date. And so, being a district and having those governmental powers, you have that ability to look at your assessments and really make some kind of harder decisions that I don't think we've seen from the district in the past couple of years. And I think from my position as a counselor, that can be very difficult to watch because I can't do that, right? And so, knowing that we're trying to work on these different things and there's going to have to be some really difficult discussions and decisions at the district board, how do you plan to kind of use that power if appointed again? And how do you see that moving forward with your board, looking at potentially raising assessments, on properties and looking at putting that on future ballots, or looking at other types of revenue stability and doing that? I mean, the biggest thing we're all going to be dealing with if you're reappointed is the fact that the TUT tax is going to sunset. So we're all going to have to work together to figure out what kind of long-term funding is going to happen for Parks and Recreation. And so I'm just really curious from your perspectives, as people who want to be reappointed, how are you planning to deal with kind of some of those difficult things that we're going to have to deal with in the next couple of years? And, how are you going to wield that kind of power a little bit more effectively, I think, in the future?
Well, I think to begin with, both the city and Parks and Rec need a clear clarification of roles. What the city is responsible for in the city park and what the Parks and Rec is responsible in the rec district. The rec district is just a swimming pool. So that brings up a whole lot of past history as to why it was ever commingled. And I think that we have an opportunity here to sit down, delineate responsibility, how it's going to get done, who's going to do it, and how we can improve what we're doing. And I hope to be a part of that.
Right.
Questions?
I have a follow-up question, and I have to say, I really respect the volunteering of all three members. I know it takes a lot of time to care for something, and progress is always slower than we'd like. The attitude in the city has changed very drastically in 8 years on the board. I'm sure, we've moved in my time from, and it didn't start exclusively with me, but in the years I've been involved with council, we've definitely shifted our mentality from we're poor, we can't do anything, we'll cut things when when we can't afford them, to we're really committed to if we don't have capacity, we'll increase it. We're going to face our problems and try to be successful. And we really, as a city, as an elected official for the community, the community wants that same attitude in the Parks and Rec.
Right.
And a long time ago, back when Dunsmuir residents probably didn't approve anything tax-wise, somehow they created in the 40s a tax that today raises about $100,000 for the benefit of the properties and community within the zip code of Dunsmuir. I personally take issue, the more I've looked into the history, with the concept that Parks and Rec owns the pool, city owns that, let's just split and do it. Because a long time ago in the 40s, people had enough vision to say we should all pitch our money together through property taxes and have this district formed. Well, I guess the basic question would be, how could we do things differently so that we didn't reach the point where we kind of reached a crisis point? And I know it was precipitated, sadly, with the passing of Dale. But would you feel that Parks and Rec could make meaningful progress on some of the big issues as a board? Is there a lot of creativity and commitment to doing things differently? Or do you view it as just continuing and cutting? Because I've seen a lot of, but in all small towns, but let's continue until we have to cut. So could you maybe fill in what your vision, how you would like to do things differently as a district to
Well,
better
we're
achieve the goals?
Building the city offices and stuff down there. It seems to me that it's going to be a lot easier to work together.
Mhm.
To have a nice park, and a swimming pool.
Yeah.
But I think the falling off of a lot of the activity began with COVID-19.
Mhm.
Our hands were tied. And we just haven't been able. I mean, it's hard to get volunteers to get the, unless they're directly affected by either something we're doing or not doing.
Mhm.
And and I find, I'm with the Dunsmuir Botanical Gardens, and we find the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think we're just going through a hump, but I really would like to see clarity. I'm sure you guys do too. I mean,
Yeah.
you probably walk around going, what are we supposed to do? Who's responsible for that? And back in the 40s, Dunsmuir was a different town. So my hope is that once all the offices are built, I mean, and before that, working on that, I'm not saying that
Yeah.
it's not going to happen until then, but that we're Parks and Rec with the city of Dunsmuir. I mean, it's
Yeah, just
that we all work
integrate.
together.
Okay.
But I think what the biggest problem is delineation of responsibility. So that once we know that, then we can see where we can overlap.
Okay, would you, because these things have been discussed in our joint meetings,
Right.
would you be open to, I'm not committed either one way or the other, but I
Right.
would like to hear from you. Would you be open to a change in leadership on the administration side of Parks and Rec, possibly combined with city administration?
Well, that would all depend on what the wording is for the rec district from the state. I mean, there's certain legal ties and stuff there that would cause us to either do that or not do that. So I
Yeah.
don't know what they are.
Yeah, and I'm more talking conceptual, because I know it'd have to be like a contract out to have our substantive administration, but I know your staff member's not planning on staying forever.
Right.
I guess, would you be open to a change in leadership going forward as part of this integration? You said potentially.
Right. I would. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
And thank you so much.
Thank
Any
you.
further questions? Sure, thank you. And with that, we will move on to Katie O'Grady.
Hello, I'm Katie O'Grady, and I'm here seeking a reappointment for my board seat on the Parks and Rec. I've been on the Parks and Rec board since 2018. I'm the current chair. I have a real passion for that position. I am committed to it. I've lived in Dunsmuir for about 20 years, actually 20 years next month. And the main reason I moved here as opposed to Mount Shasta was because of the pool and the parks. I just thought they were amazing. And so I'm real honored to be on the Parks and Rec board. In fact, I have a real passion for the pool, and 96 years ago, on the 28th of this month, our pool opened. And so I want to be part of the legacy to keep it open. And to address Juliana's concern, I know that we, as Parks and Rec, we are tenants of the city. We have a lease, a 50-year lease. And I know that there's been some questions about responsibilities, and we, after Dale passed, there was some concerns about the way that the park was maintained, or the ballpark. And we had a couple of meetings, and I think we had a nice agreement that the city would help us with that. Being a tenant, as you know, if you're a tenant, your landlord usually helps out with the major repairs and concerns about maintenance. And so I really look forward to, I think we've had a couple of meetings, and I think proceeding in the future, perhaps like ad hoc meetings with a couple of council members, a couple of members from the Parks and Rec Board, and perhaps if we need to, attorneys from each of our organizations could get together and figure out how we proceed moving forward. One thing I do know is that we all have a common interest, and that is that we love our town, we love our parks, our pool. And so that's how I see us proceeding forward. And I really hope to be a part of that. So.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have two. I'll paraphrase from my long-winded questions from last time. The first would be, do you view Parks and Rec's responsibility as the pool, or do you view it as more inclusive to Parks and Recreation within the district? Like,
Well, when
or
I
do you-
first started in 2018, it was just, the pool and the parks, Tall and Dolly, the city, the ballpark, and the botanical gardens, the agreement that we had with them. And obviously the pool, which is our property. And so, but now I see that there's possibly going to be a little change there perhaps. And then we would strictly own the pool, and that would be our responsibility, would be the pool. That's a big responsibility fiscally, and just maintenance wise, it's huge.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, but if the park were to be taken away from Parks and Rec, you would lose something like 70% of your responsibilities while maintaining your funding.
Mhm.
So as a member of the district, I just have this kind of basic concept of, I think we need a strong Parks and Rec district that's, especially if we want to be an outdoor recreation destination. So I guess, yeah, so you think the core mission of the park would be more pool focused, less district-wide recreation?
Well, it's a huge responsibility for us, and
Yeah.
the onus falls on us rather than the city. I mean, we do get some money from the city, but it's a huge responsibility for us maintaining it. It's an old pool. Again, it opened in 1929. So it's in it. If you know anything about pools and chemicals and everything, it's extremely expensive. And so I do believe with the money that we would receive from the county that we could really enhance the pool, do all of the repairs that we need to make it, a real viable pool that could maybe even stay open later in the year. When this pool opened in 1929, it was open from 8:30 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. And it was heated, 2 lifeguards on duty at all times and a nurse. It was really amazing if you go back and look at the history. And so, and it talked about it being a beacon in the North County, and it really still is. And so I'm really proud of it. Every time I drive by it, I feel just really happy. The mural, it's
Mural's
just
great.
beautiful. Yeah. So anyway, I really want to be part. So if you deem like yeah. Well, I suppose so. Yeah, that's something to, yep, absolutely. I think we should have a very big party. Well, we would hope to
So
have a very big party. Yeah.
thank you, Katie. I have my other question. I'll just ask it directly. Would you be open to a change in administration, leadership in Parks and Rec, especially where we are right now, trying to integrate keeping services here, not just abandoning our district and what it
Right.
stood for 80 years?
Right.
Would you be open to a change in administration leadership?
I mean, of course, in the future. Currently, I really am honored to work with Mike. He's been with the district for approximately 50 years. If you know anybody who's grown up in Mount Shasta or Dunsmuir and they were involved in sports, they know Mike. And so he has a passion and a heart for the parks and the pool, and I respect him and really enjoy working with him. So, but obviously retirement would come in the future for him. So yes, of course, there would be a change in the future. But I enjoy working with Mike now.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Ms. White?
Hi, should I introduce myself and tell?
Go ahead and introduce.
Okay,
what you'd like to-
so I'm Rami White. I've been here about 12 years. And when I first came to Dunsmuir, it was right out of school. I had my young son. We really didn't know anything about this town. We didn't really have anything. We kind of took a leap of faith and moved up here. And this town welcomed us, and gave us so much when we got here. I got a beautiful place to raise my son. We were welcomed, the community. I've never felt so at home somewhere. I've never actually felt at home anywhere except for here. So I just found places where I could serve the community. I worked for the Dunsmuir Resource Center as an early childhood specialist and helped get the community garden going, worked for the elementary school as an after school aide and an art teacher, and then an middle school teacher. And I currently am an elementary school teacher. So my motivation really is serving the community, but especially the young people. And that's where my interest was in serving on the board, was to help serve the community, especially for the young people. And the pool is one of my other passions too. And it's not just for recreation, it's for safety. I really believe that having the pool gives kids a safer place to learn how to swim and to it's a really good place. It keeps them out of more dangerous places that they could be unsupervised and in the water. So that was one of my original motivations for being on the board, was to help keep that going and just to serve the community and give back everything that I've gotten. And now I feel like I'm one of the newer board members and I've never served on a board before. So I feel like I'm just now kind of after like 4 years kind of starting to get it, like the whole process. So anyway, so I'm kind of nervous, but go ahead and ask your questions.
All right, any questions?
I did.
You serve as a lifeguard, did you not?
Yes. Yeah. There was one year when they said they needed lifeguards. And so that was 5 years ago.
We need a lifeguard.
Yeah.
And what did you say? You said, yes, I'll do it for the kids.
Yeah.
So I remember that.
Yeah. 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 I was actually thinking about the kids as I was doing my lifeguard test. I was like, gotta keep the kids out of the river, unsupervised in the river. But
All right, any other questions?
yeah, kind of going back to the questions about, you know, in the next couple of years, we're going to have to make some really difficult decisions, and the district is going to be poised to have to also make some really difficult decisions, especially around finances and revenue. And so I'm just curious, from your point of view, if reappointed, you know, how do you plan to deal with that aspect? So what I've noticed or observed over the last few years is I feel like we could use a lot more communication between the two entities. I feel like there's like a total restructuring happening right now, it seems like, and we're like redefining our roles and how moving forward. So I do think I see a lot of communication needed. I am open, and I'm like open to learning how to serve the community as a whole. And that's where my interest is whatever is best for the whole community. That's what our interest should be. So moving forward, that I feel like we need to keep that in mind. Like, are these decisions going to benefit the whole of the community for future generations as well? So I really think that we're going to have to have a lot of talks about, like they were saying, like what are our roles, you know, what are our responsibilities and what are the city's responsibilities, and how can we make it better? Like for example, the pool, how can we make the pool really thrive and have like a better longer year with like longer hours like it used to be? You know, how can we make it really grow, and how can we make programs really grow for the community? Because I think there's a lot more we could do. Yeah, really quick, and this is gonna be yes or no because you two aren't at the podium. Have you guys gotten any training from your executive director on like what the mission of the Parks District is? What are the tools and abilities that you have? Okay. But I'd be open to that. And we did, I think, ethics and harassment. Yeah, which, you're required, but so no one's ever just.
That was 6 years ago.
Well, you have to do it every 2 years. Yeah. So no one's ever really sat you guys down and told you what you can do as a district. No, and I would be really interested in that. I think that would be great. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I'm sorry, that's nothing against you or anything, but I would really like that. That
I
would be,
think from my experience working with boards professionally is that it is really important to have staff who support you in your roles. And one of those things is education. And so, for example, anytime you get a new planning commissioner, things like that, which we should probably have a training program, going through like, what does a planning commission do? What are the things there? And because you guys have your own set of rules as a parks district and how your assessment is set up, and maybe talking about how that assessment works and what you can do with that. Because I think just my worry is a lot of the answers so far is putting a lot of onerous on us still. And a lot of it is, you guys have specific tools that you have at your disposal that we do not have. And so, okay, this makes
Okay.
a lot of sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cause
I'm trying not to put the onerous on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a, to work together.
Yeah.
So that we get this finally straight.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Relationship that we need to determine.
and I'll,
There is
yeah,
some gray
and I'll
area.
just, and
Yeah.
I'll just say this since
Right.
we're on the conversational topic. I mean, I was really thankful to the city for sending me to the Cal City's new council member and mayor training, where I learned, I mean, just so much, and that was so helpful. And I think it would be good to find, I think this is a great path to go down, so.
Yeah, I'm just here to serve the community, whatever helps especially the young people growing up here. I have a lot of kids that I've watched grow up here, so I kind of have a interest in that especially. So,
Well, thank you, Rami.
Yeah.
I think you already answered my general question of how do you view the mission of Parks and Rec, that you think it's whatever the highest good of the community is as a whole. I'd also want to ask you, would you be open to a change in administrative leadership with everything that's kind of unfolding right now?
I think I'll echo what like they were saying. I mean, I think if we determine that serves the community and the organization, but I do think that Mike's been great to work with, and I do think that he like as far like I'm sure retirement is on his mind. But we just have to look at things with that in mind. So what serves the greatest good of the community? So that's where I am. If that was what was decided, that
I
would
really
be the
appreciate
best
the
thing.
answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any other council questions for either staff before we move into public comment? All right, with that, I will open up this item for public comment. Same rules as public comment on the previous item. 3 minutes, please limit your comment to this particular item. I'll give a 30-second warning, state your name and address for the record, and with that, take it away.
Peter Arth, 5859 Sacramento Avenue. The last half hour's discussion has been absolutely terrific. As someone who's been in the community for 16 years, we talk about sea changes, we talk about tipping points. What I heard from Commissioner O'Grady is we need to clarify our roles, both as a commission and a city council. We need to clarify our goals, both as a commission, both as a city council. Commissioner White, communication. All we've heard over the last several months is how poor the communication is within city government. So if in the next 12 to 24 months, whether it's on a committee basis or an ad hoc basis, the two leaderships can agree to meet quarterly, include the citizens, like Babe Ruth hit it out of the park. If you can hit it out of the park with these assets for the kids and for our community, obviously helping tourism for our small town, you will have done a really, really good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other further public comment on this item? If you are online, you may raise your hand using the reactions tab. And seeing none, I will close public comment on this item. All right, with that, we'll move into council discussion.
Second.
All right, there's a motion. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And passes unanimously. All right, with that, we'll move on.
Thank you all.
Yes, and thank you so much.
Maybe you've come a long way since you were first up at that podium.
You couldn't do no public speaking and look at her now. Good job.
All right, and with that, we will move on to fireworks ban ordinance 577 and resolution 2024-09.
All right, Mayor and Council, so we, the item C and D of 11 C and D are, we're moving from an annual kind of ban to an ordinance that, gives the fire chief the authority to, move to, more seasonal ban based on the weather conditions and recommendations from CAL FIRE. And so, first, before you, I would ask the council, because the ordinance takes multiple reads and we are now in fire season, as you saw me leave just a few minutes ago, we have a fire that popped up about 2 miles from my house. So I had to make sure that my wife was calm. But it is definitely fire season. And so we will, I would like to put the resolution before the council and ask them to approve that. And then we can go on to the first reading of the ordinance to ban fireworks in the city during seasonal periods.
Okay. And then just curious, this is for both the ordinance and the
Yeah,
resolution?
one staff report and
Okay.
both items.
Yes, correct. Yep. And then just checking here, as you said, this basically puts the power to ban or not ban fireworks in the hands of Chief Padilla.
So really quick, so this should be taken as two separate
Yes.
items because it is two separate items on the agenda.
All right, well, we will start with
I think item C.
the resolution then.
Yes.
And the resolution also just gives Chief Padilla the ability to
Do the same.
do the same. Okay. All right, council questions? All right, with that, I will move on
Actually, I
to,
do have a
you have a question?
For the ordinance.
For the
Well, we're
resolution,
doing the resolution first, then we're
Just
gonna
for
do
this
the
year?
ordinance.
the resolution is just for right now.
The resolution is till the ordinance is in effect.
Okay.
If you could, Mr. Mayor, you may want to, for the public, explain, why we're doing it in two different tranches here. It makes sense to me, but I just.
Yeah, so just, and no city manager, we've touched on it a little bit, but for an ordinance, you need 2 readings. Since we only have this meeting before the 4th of July, and we wanted to put this power in the hands of our fire chief to ban fireworks or not ban fireworks, depending on the current conditions. We wanted to also do the resolution. So basically, the resolution and the ordinance say the same thing. The resolution is just temporary until the ordinance goes into effect after the second reading and the council vote. All right. One question I had was that for both of these going into effect, how is whether or not fireworks are allowed or not going to be communicated to the general public?
So the same, well, we can post that online, but
Mhm.
when the dooryard ban goes in effect for fires in the front yards, then that is when, most likely when the chief will ban fireworks. And then that'll be recommunicated upon first rain in, late fall, hopefully.
Okay.
So I'll ask some questions about both, but mostly based on the text. Would it be possible to make this ban? I'd be more comfortable with something tied to that fire policy so that there couldn't be any arbitrary reasons why it wouldn't be allowed when it's not ordinary fire season. As in winter time.
So one thing that was partly my understanding here, if I can just jump in a little bit, is that's also partly on us. If we hear that fireworks are banned and it's raining, as the council, we can kind of communicate that through and put a little pressure to lift said ban at any given time.
I guess my central issue here has been because of our existential threat to wildfire. Our council, almost every year I've been involved with this, has just unanimously said, hey, let's ban them, all of them. It's fire danger. if our true intention is to just have an outright ban on all types of fireworks for the rest of time, then communicate that. I'm not in favor of that. We've always presented it as a due to high fire risk. I think it would be a best case scenario if, because I know there's a number of our community who are passionate about fireworks. If we're never going to allow them, that should be clearly communicated. If that's the intention of this council, it's not what I would favor. If we're going to allow them in controlled circumstances, we need to trade with the public and say, hey, you're not allowed to do it in these horrible circumstances, but we will positively work to give you a venue where you can enjoy your fireworks on a given date, time, et cetera, where it is safe. And I think the city has failed at providing that opportunity. So if it is the intention to ban fireworks in Dunsmuir for the rest of time, I think we shouldn't make it a discretionary back and forth thing, but we're banned for the rest of time. I don't agree with that, but I think that has been by and large the stance. And it misleads the public that's anticipating, some resolution here.
Well, I think one part of this here, this is when I originally put this, I didn't want when I originally put this as a future agenda item, suggested being an ordinance. I definitely didn't want something that would just outright ban fireworks in the town at all times. And I definitely wouldn't be in support of that either. And that's why I think it went, that's why I think it went in this direction where it put it in the fire chief's hands to make that call on whether or not they would be allowed and when they would be allowed. Although we are getting dangerously close to discussion right now.
I know that's what I was feeling there going on.
I think we're still on, I think we're technically still on the resolution, so I understand his point, though.
Yeah. So
Public comment for the resolution.
Yeah, let's move into the resolution for public comment. All right. Same rules as before, 3 minutes, 30-second warning. Please state your name and address and leave the house.
Debbie Spagnola, 4120 Edith in Dunsmuir. Talk about when you can and cannot do it, but what about where you can and cannot do it? Aren't there places where there can be, the ballpark or the high school parking lot, someplace where people want to go? Not everybody goes to Mount Shasta to see fireworks. If they want to do their own at home, why don't you? I think it'd be terrible to ban fireworks for eons. There's got to be something that we can still enjoy them. And I think that if you can set places like block off downtown Main Street, and if you want to bring your fireworks, bring them, something like that. The ballpark, something to keep 4th of July, 4th of July. It's why we're here. Freedom, USA's birthday. I mean, I think there's other things to do than to just say when. I think you can say where. I think you guys should consider that, something like that, because there's a lot of people that don't go to Mount Shasta. And you miss the ones on the lake anyways, because you can't see them unless you're on the lake. So that's my suggestion. I wouldn't vote for this resolution at all or ordinance.
Quinn Gaddy, 4833 Siskiyou Avenue, just here in a personal capacity. I don't think the fire season is going to magically stop August 31st. So I'm glad you guys are looking at something. I would permanently get rid of them. Climate change isn't getting any better. We're in a canyon and in a box. And I think Mr. Decatur is doing a fine job to get this place a fire-wise community, but insurance premiums are as high as they are for a reason. If you look at what happened in the campfire in the city of Paradise, it didn't take but a few hours for that whole place to burn down. The same thing could happen here. And I think your head's in the sand if you're saying otherwise. So I'd probably go a lot further than you guys are doing right now. Mount Shasta is just up the road. You can go to Lake Siskiyou for 4th of July. I love freedom too, but I also love not burning. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, seeing no one, I will close public comment on this item. All right, and we'll just go into discussion for the resolution.
If we limited right now to just a resolution, then I'm certainly in favor of it with the fires that have been going on here recently and with the short notice. So if we're just talking about that, then I would move to approve the resolution.
All right,
Second.
it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and with that, we'll move on to the next item, which is the ordinance.
Okay, so a lot of this ordinance relies on the definitions that are adopted by the state fire code. And so it stays with the state fire marshal, which Chief Padilla relies upon what the state fire marshal allows him, what he can and cannot allow within the city in terms of safe and unsafe fireworks. This does have a prohibition on safe and sane fireworks for the purpose of this outside of the exceptions area, which is on page 28 of the agenda packet. So there are some personal exceptions. So for example, if they do have emergency signaling, these are all very specific to exceptions within the state fire code, which you are required to allow those within the city limits. I doubt any of these would happen. They are required to get permits. There is an overall exempt fireworks section. So this would include sparklers, some of the more minor fireworks that do not have projectiles. So you're allowed to have sparklers if you really want to do that. But basically, this is a stricter ban than what we have typically looked at because it does include a prohibition on safe and sane. What this does allow, though, is if we did want to have a commercial entity do a formal fireworks show, they can get a permit to go do that. In my professional opinion and personal opinion, I trust the commercial providers who have to get permits, who have to have their own liability insurance and go through their own training to do that. Those are, in my opinion, the safest fireworks that you can have. Personally, I'll wait for my discussion points on that until after public comment. But this is basically modeled after a number of other communities in California that simply just adopted the state fire code, which has gone to a more stricter interpretation. So it does give Mr. Padilla some ability to allow, but it's really just what is defined to what the state fire marshal has issued memos for allowing within a community, which is stricter than what we have typically discussed in the past as a council. And this would apply for all year round. So this would not be temporal. You could add that if you so choose. That would change the material of the ordinance itself, which would require an additional first reading, but that's fine. We did adopt the resolution to stay in place until this is what people are comfortable with on the council. So I'll leave that to questions.
Well, the question I would have then is if the fire marshal wanted to have or allow something at a ballpark or something along those lines, that would be up to the fire marshal then, right?
Yes, so they have to get a permit from the state fire marshal regardless to do something like that if it's a commercial entity. Now, if you're talking about what has been brought up previously, where we as a local jurisdiction go, yeah, we're going to have an event where someone who is not licensed can go and light something off, that would not be allowed unless there is a commercial provider overseeing that event.
I guess what I was sensing, and I've thought about this in the past, just a place where people could gather around in a safe place and just light off their firecrackers, those kind of things. But that is not part of this, and I'm just wondering, is that not part of this now, right?
That is not what is included in the current ordinance language.
Right.
I have a question. I ask the same question every year. And I'm not saying that it's not an issue, but do we have any data to back up the safe and sane fireworks causing all these fires in jurisdictions like Dunsmuir? I recognize the, just nature of fireworks, fire danger, and I'm sensitive to it, but I take it the state has a keen interest in keeping this under control too. They have regulatory agencies who build fireworks. Have we ever, and I just would like to have that as a relevant fact. If it is a major issue, I'd like to know the data behind it, not just assume these start fires right and left.
Well, it is a big issue. I don't know the exact data behind it, but I do know that in order for us to enforce it, we have to have an ordinance in place. And so that's been one of the issues at CAL FIRE when we are in high fire season and trying to manage that. CAL FIRE has not been able to actively enforce it with fines and whatever else because we haven't had an ordinance in place. And so that's one of the things that is required in order to be able to, when we decide it is time, like it's getting pretty dry now here, but I mean, there's been 2 fires up north of us already and multiple to the south. So you know, it'll be 99 on Saturday, so it'll change quickly. And
Right.
so I guess that's from the fire chief's standpoint, they haven't been able to enforce necessarily with fines from a resolution.
Okay.
So
Well,
so going back to your original question though, so one of the things so there could be a report with sectioned off data for safe and sane versus illegal
Exactly.
fireworks. There could be, I'm not familiar with that data
Yeah.
set. The data set that I'm more familiar with is versus commercially authorized fireworks exhibitions and personal fireworks use. One of the things noted in there's a state report that was published in February about last year's numbers. The concern is over individuals who are not properly trained to administer fireworks, regardless of if they are safe and sane or not. That there is a disproportionate amount. So for fireworks in specific. So if we're talking about not wildfires as a whole, if we're talking about just fires started by fireworks, they're disproportionately started by people who are not trained to do fireworks. And so they don't differentiate illegal versus sane in that circumstance. They just differentiated between those who are commercially trained versus those who are untrained.
Yeah, and of course, the rationale behind the safe and sane label, you would think the regulatory agency in charge of that would, that's exclusively what they study.
Mhm.
How do these certain type of fireworks not lead to negative results? So I guess, yeah, and I'm.
One of the big concerns they listed in there was really more of the difference between the apparatus that's used. So if it has a projectile nature to it, it has a much higher chance of starting a fire due to untrained individuals using it, as opposed to say like a stationary source. But a lot of fireworks do result in a significant number of projectiles being sent, regardless of the radii of that.
Yeah.
And we got to.
All right. Any other questions?
And we got to public.
No.
We have a public comment on.
We do.
the floor?
We have
I
not.
have one more question, and the councilman question though. What does the enforcement look like? Because there hasn't really been enforcement. You know, I'm sad to say, despite council's best efforts, fireworks seem to lit off everywhere in Dunsmuir. And
You wanna answer
people
that one,
very
Rich?
Busy already during that time.
At this exact moment, I would lean toward, you know, if it were to happen right now, like a causing an unsafe fire, as far as possession of unlawful fireworks, there's a section for that as well. Safe and sane, without an ordinance for that, that's one of it. But your bottle rockets, scary ones, all the cool ones, you know.
Yeah, the mortars.
And if they have,
Don't go to New Mexico and come back.
there we go. There are state laws for possession of fireworks not being safe and sane, and the starting of a fire, this isn't my exact area of expertise, but it is a misdemeanor to cause an unsafe fire, or whether it's an accident or on purpose. I'd rather be quiet.
I was more trying to ask the question about how does this ordinance change fine structure? Like, what happens if someone's shooting off fireworks in Dunsmuir?
So this will allow us to follow the state guidelines on the fines. We're not setting the fine. It's already been set. I
So,
want to say it's
state-
$100 or something like.
It ranges depending upon what the violation is. One of the things to denote is that this would it would give the city both the ability to use the penal code, which we can currently use for illegal. What this would do additionally is that it would also allow the city to go into the admin site process that it does for other infractions. One of the issues again, this is not a discussion item, it's just merely for answering your question and for discussion later. If you allow safe and sane an individual, but you don't allow them to be lit off within city limits, you have to basically catch a person doing it and in the process of doing it, which is extremely hard to do for enforcement. Now, what this ordinance does is that the possession of safe and sane is a ticketable offense here. So if someone does have fireworks, they're lighting them off, and say the sheriffs were to go there, they could issue them a penalty because they have fireworks, they're out, and there is a high suspicion that they have it. So that's where that kind of enforcement key comes in, is the possession of it. And with, again, the intent to set them off. And so that's why a lot of cities are moving to this kind of code, as opposed to allowing safe and sane, but then not allowing them to light it off during certain periods of time. Does that make sense?
It does, but I have deep concerns over, I didn't realize the possession was that, because this would outlaw, well, this is discussion. So.
All right, any further questions before we go to public comment? All right, with that, I'll open this up to public comment. Same rules as general public comment, 3 minutes, 30 seconds. All right, and with that, I will open this up to public comment.
When Matthew asked about, the details or however he said it, how many fires have actually happened in town? Or like, okay, I could see something going off in the air and there's dead shrubbery around. That's gonna be a fire hazard, whether there's a firework or not. On the ground ones, I don't know, I think there should be more, research as to how many fires are actually caused by fireworks. I mean, we used to shoot them off on the street after Mount Shasta, and we clean up our mess and do them on the street, and they were right there, and the adults were there, and the kids were there, and everything was fine. I never, in my personal life and my personal experience with them, I've never had a fire from a firework. And sometimes I'm afraid to light them, but I'll do it anyways instead of a kid. But that's just a risk you take. But you gotta. It goes back to having common sense, man. And all this stuff you guys are talking about seems way too another law, another fine, another law, another fine. You can't do this, you can't do that. I don't like it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, seeing no one, I will close public comment for this item.
Project will not have a significant adverse impact on the environment related to the environmental review pursuant to Seaport Island. Section 1506(1)(e)(3). According to rules that we introduced and read ordinance 577 by title only, and that we direct staff to bring ordinance 577 back for adoption at the next regular meeting.
I'll second.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to discuss elements of this prior to the motion vote.
All right.
I have concerns over the very right of possessing or storing fireworks. It's fairly common practice in our area to buy fireworks in the summer when they're readily available. And since it's dangerous and unpopular and sometimes illegal to set them off during the fire season, they set them off literally on the snow in the wintertime for their New Year's Eve celebrations. I think, I mean, obviously we're not going to be getting warrants and going into people's houses looking for fireworks, but I'm not so convinced that going so far as to make it a crime to store legally purchasable fireworks in the state of California. If you're caught with them in your car in Dunsmuir, we're going to give you a ticket, or could give you a ticket. I guess we could apply it equitably, the law, for what we're intending, but I just have a concern that this law is a bit of an overreach compared to what we're trying to achieve.
I'm gonna put this out there too. I do kind of agree with you on that one. I also have an issue with this ordinance in terms of the fact that it's not seasonal. And while it does give the person some power, it sounds like, I would like to see there be more discretion based around when they can be done. And give the city some power into that. Specifically, as you said, if it's snowing, we should be allowed to light out, New Year's Eve. I still think fireworks should be allowed at that time. I would like to either see some seasonality, and that's what I thought we were moving towards, or giving the fire chief more control to make them, have them legal, have them not, because it sounds like that's actually not quite what this says. And if it's December, it's been raining for 3 weeks and it snowed 2 days ago, I don't see why we should be banning fireworks at that point. Now, I do, in terms of possession, if you've got all your fireworks, if it's 4th of July or August 8th, and you've got all your fireworks lined out on the street, you've got a lighter with you, that's exactly, that's where I see the possession argument making sense, but if it's in your car, in your house, I don't see any that, I agree with you on that point. I think this needs a little bit of tweaking, just personally. before I'd be willing to vote for it. I would like to see some ability for either us as the council, Chief Padilla, or just some basic rules that follow the basic state, you know, the CAL FIRE green through red system, and maybe it's allowed when it's green, out, you know, banned at all other times. I just would really like to see something that would allow people to use them in certain circumstances
Well,
or at certain times.
For right now, we've already got the resolution out there for the year, and so I guess it makes sense to take our time with this. And I would think also that getting Chief Padilla directly involved in the conversation of mapping out how we could both be flexible. But you know, the larger picture is at times like right now, we had a whole lot of rain. We all know that everything has grown like heck, and now it's all gonna die. And you know, that's my biggest concern is anything that could possibly, I mean, I know that some of the big fires have been started. I think the car fire was started by somebody with a chain on a, you know, something dragging on the road. So when it's like this, I don't want to see any sparks, period, at all. But at other times, and I think, you know, maybe having a New Year's Eve celebration where that's when we light everything off and we get together. But I just think we have a motion right now, but I would counter motion after we decide what to do on that, that we just table it, and come back with more work on it since we're safe for the year.
Motion's been motion and it's been seconded. And what this is for, why we're doing it now, is because there ain't no meeting on the 4th of July.
But
we're trying to give him the power to show that there ain't no fireworks on the 4th of July.
We already did the resolution.
The resolution takes care of it.
No.
You can't
So-
act on it unless you get the order.
So two things. So first off, this is introduced at a point that it will not take effect by July 4th regardless.
Yeah.
Second, you cannot ticket or you cannot enforce a resolution. It has to be an ordinance or within the penal code.
Right.
So just by passing that resolution stating that, it discourages people, but it doesn't enter into an administrative citation role.
So when do we have a second reading?
So we still have to do a vote on this for the motion at hand, but just going back to, you know, the comments that have been made in discussion, and the only thing that I can address as someone who has seconded the motion to move forward with this is that you have the Occam's razor piece here. So the more complicated you make this ordinance, one, it becomes more difficult to enforce. It becomes more difficult to communicate. And so I understand the seasonality, I understand the possession storage piece, but these are the types of legal language that are required to be able to discourage people from doing this. And I understand that. So it is one thing that I would caution the council is that, yes, we can come back and amend this ordinance later. If we want to get more information on the data and do some kind of seasonality thing, that's fine. But one of the things that was not done in anticipation for this meeting is what does that look like as an impact to Mr. Padilla? What does that look like on an impact to enforcement? This has been the recommended model for communities like our own that are in very high wildfire severity zones. And I can understand that it is strict. It is a stricter interpretation of it. But at this point in time, a lot of people are moving into this realm, especially within our circumstances, because we are in such a very high wildfire severity zone. And that was kind of the impetus of this, is that it's to keep everybody safe from most of these things happening. And going back to it, you know, why government exists generally is that we have what's called a police power. Police power is divided into ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of the people. And I understand some people may not agree with rules that are put into place, but at the end of the day, it's our utmost duty to keep people safe. And I understand if this is really strict. I do really get that. And maybe we do tweak it again, you know, in the future. Ordinances can be changed. You know, and it's not like a witch hunt going to search for fireworks, but again, it gives every single law enforcement entity the ability to now ticket individuals who have that piece without necessarily seeing them set it off.
Can I ask an additional question? I appreciate your comments. It would actually have some impact on my thoughts if the county adopted something similar.
They adopted the exact same thing.
Yeah, so that actually kind of changes some of my thoughts on possession, because I wouldn't want it to be arbitrarily different for people who don't even understand our jurisdictional border.
Yeah, Siskiyou County passed similar language in 2022.
I knew they were working on one.
Yeah. And again, if we want to make it more nuanced, that's fine. I think my concern going into this is that, again, going back to it, the more nuanced you make it, the more implementation is there and the more education that you have to put into effect to make sure people are doing it on the correct day. And there's education for staff as well, you know, going through that. That's why a lot of people going back to other changes in state codes and local codes, there's a lot of organizations going to, you cannot yard burn anymore. You know, speaking from my professional standpoint at the city of Wairika, they are looking at not allowing you to burn in your yard, period, anymore, and having alternatives for getting rid of vegetation on your property because it is such a hazard. And so I understand that that's a change from people's lifestyle choices, but it's in response to changing temperature increases, drought, drier weather, and just trying to address those as best as we can. So I'll call it a question.
Right. I still really don't want to see this unless it's seasonal, but all those in favor?
May we do a roll call vote?
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. All right, let's do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lucchese
Aye.
and Councilmember Bryan.
I'm going to abstain for now. I just think there's a few things I'd like to work out before being fully in support of it.
Councilmember Deutsch,
Aye.
Councilmember Keisler.
Aye.
Mayor Clarno.
I'm also going to follow Councilmember Bryan and abstain on this.
Motion passes.
Just want to state, I know that this is not popular, but my biggest concern is a fire. And so
Mhm.
that's why I'm taking the extra steps.
Yes, definitely.
And there may be a chance to alter it in the future, but for right now, that's my biggest concern, period.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
With that, we will move on to item number E, review and approval of fiscal year 2023-2024 budget amendments.
Excellent. Now the real fireworks happen. So- Oh, I got you got that one.
I don't
Jeez.
know if this
We
was
just-
late in
we
the
just-
year.
Man, late, yeah.
It's not even that late.
8:05, yeah.
Wow.
not that bad.
Well, it's solstice.
What, yeah, that's right. Happy solstice, everybody. So what in front of you, so city manager, so Dustin, Dennis and I, we sat down for about, I don't know, 6 hours, something like that. Went over current year. So this is current year budget. That's ending in whatever 3 days or 5 days or, you know, June 30th, whatever that is. So we went through the current year financials and came up with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 line items that could use some budget amendments.
Call that an amendment,
Yeah.
okay?
If you're referring to the large one, then yes, it's an amendment.
What's the sum of the 5?
How did we get
In
there?
terms of change?
Looks like,
Like general fund specific or by fund?
97,000?
Yeah, $7,000 to $347,000. What happened there?
That's the contractors. That's solid waste. That's our contract fee for Clemens. So there was
Yeah, we had it at 340,000.
340 and now we're moving it
We're
to
moving it to
347.
347.
So it's
Sorry.
$7,000.
Yeah,
So this is
the left,
change.
the left column.
Same thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Next time we should.
yeah, the
This
left
makes
column
so
should change.
You need to do-
sense now, because I had the same question.
You
I was
need
like,
to do
how?
Amendment total.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the second column, so 50,000 is the change. So
Yeah.
nuisance abatement, we expended 50,000 more than what we had previously budgeted for a new total of 61,150. Is that how I read this?
Yeah,
Perfect.
For the bigger
Okay.
example here, it's
Thank
on
you.
item number 7. It was budgeted at 340 and it is currently at 347. So there's a $7,000 difference.
Correct.
Mr.
Not
Mayor?
a
Yeah, so there's a
$340,000.
$17,000 impact
Yeah.
to the solid waste fund,
Yeah.
a 4,000 to Fund 59, and a 76,000 to the general fund.
Okay.
So I guess
Mr.
the
Mayor?
biggest one is nuisance abatement.
Right.
Followed by Parks and Rec.
And I'd just like to get a sense of why the large increase there. The other one seemed.
Could I make a brief statement or a question?
Yeah.
Through the-
Well,
through the chair?
first though, we had Bruce's question, then we'll have your question.
Okay.
Yeah, so Justin or Blake, whichever, in terms of the large cost change there, that's the number one is the biggest, obviously. Why is that as large as it is?
It takes a lot to do vacant distressed.
Is it a new thing that we've been doing that we hadn't been doing before is what I'm
So,
asking?
yes, remember back in, was that November or whatever, we appointed Silver and Wright? Well, we were not actively receiving any code enforcement from Kinney and Noreen. And
Okay.
so
You hired somebody in that.
so we hired somebody, and so the actions of that is moving forward many of the actions towards enforcing the vacant and distressed building ordinance. And not all of those have come all the way around yet. We're still going through the legal process to get to the point for the
It's
action.
contract that we made with that company that's helping with that is what we're saying. right?
It's not all that. Some of that is actual expenses that are from cleanup and on properties and other types of things like that.
This other lawyer, from where are they from?
Curtis is like over down by
Sacramento somewhere.
They're, I got heard, just the council's aware, this, other law firm ain't doing so good. They represented the city somewhere else, they got the city sued, just so you all know.
Yeah, that's how lawyers work.
Through the chair, I asked for a
Yeah.
question or statement.
Go ahead.
So I am somewhat frustrated that this amendment shows up at council when we have a functioning finance committee that's been waiting to meet and discuss relevant issues. I think a lot of council's confusion and missing context would have been vetted out by our finance committee that would have had a very similar initial reaction. We could have fleshed it out, maybe come up with a better format. If things are counterbalanced, like for one, I know that some of the nuisance abatement actually goes against properties. That's a really relevant number. I would propose we just table this item until finance committee has a chance to review it. That being said, the realities of where we are this year, finance committee has been following. So these are not new to the finance committee, but the particular amendments, they haven't had a chance to weigh in. So if you guys are okay with that.
I'll second this motion.
Well,
We
we
still have
still
to
have to
go-
run through public
Public
comments.
comment. All right, with that, we'll open this up to public comment. Same rules, 3 minutes, 30 seconds. All right, and
Cool. Oh,
Dwight Bailey, 5906 Castle Avenue. Here comes this lawyer thing again. I told you it didn't belong in the consent calendar. I see it every month in the consent calendar. Now I look at the cost and how much we spent, how much we're going to spend. I don't believe it belongs in the consent calendar, and I don't like seeing it on this document like this, unbeknownst to anybody else. The fact is, I don't see any results for this lawyer. I don't see a good thing happening to this lawyer. The fact is, I don't think he deserves the money that he's getting. I don't think anybody in this town makes $480 an hour. And I don't like the way this is being presented. That's just my opinion. I think it is important that it come up. I'm glad this is being filmed. I'm glad the public gets to see it because the public didn't vote on this. The public didn't to honor this. The fact is, it's just bestowed upon people. And I don't think it's fair to just all of a sudden at the end of the fiscal year say, oh, we're going to throw some more money at it.
all right, thank you. All right, anyone else in person? Seeing, I know, let's slide it, yes. Seeing no one else in person, we'll go to Zoom. I do see a comment in Zoom. Are they good to speak, Wendy?
Yeah, it's good.
All right, you should be unmuted and ready to go.
Are you calling on me? Oh,
Yes, I am talking. Yep.
okay. Just two things. If this is going to be added to Monday's agenda, there should be some background information, especially on what you portrayed, Matthew, as something that we're well aware of. The second thing is, it's been quite a few years with this council, and there have been quite a few chances to deal with the historic district and the economics of downtown Dunsmuir. Quite honestly has been a failure. And I understand Mr. Ar's agitation. But nonetheless, that's only one small way to go after it, and one that has been proven unsuccessful. So we need to talk about this. We really do. And finance meeting, if it's agenda sized properly, it would be a good place to start. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment for this evening.
Table and send it to the finance committee.
I want to clarify something first, though, on Treasurer Rubino's comment. There is a similar item on the Finance Committee meeting agenda for Monday, which deals with 24-25. This particular item on here today is for 23-24. So what we have here is what went over the previous year. What we're looking at Finance Committee is what's going to be happening next year. So therefore, this particular set of items could not go on the Finance Committee meeting for Monday. It would have to be its own separate item that would then
Correct.
be discussed at its own time. I just wanted to make that clear for everybody, that this is not going to be discussed on Monday because it's not on that agenda. And will have to go on its own agendized item for Finance Committee. So, but with that,
You were Mr. Mayor.
yeah, well, I was just making it clear to everybody.
Yeah, so I mean, you still would like to, I'm the
Yeah.
finance committee, so my motion is to table this and send it to the finance committee to bring it back after they've reviewed it. I'll second it.
All right.
May I discuss really quick? I just have some requests. So one of the things that I noted here, we're not making any amendments in the budget to revenues that we received. Is that something that we could include with this budget amendment, since it would be for this current fiscal year? It would be nice to also amend the budget to reflect what the exact revenues were for the previous year. And most likely this item won't come back to the finance committee until late June. So I understand maybe some of those numbers are not accurate. But if you do happen to get to the item after July 1st, we might actually, I mean, besides maybe some property tax we might expect for this last quarter. That might be the only line item we don't see, but I know that we could probably have good projections on revenues for sales and TOT. So it'd be nice to include. Yeah, that's all I bring up. That'd be nice to have that.
I think we'll probably, I'll work to, with Blake, and we'll insert a full budget. So that way you can see all the budget, and then we'll highlight the items specifically so you can see them within the budget.
Yeah, and I realize I didn't present to the people, but the part of the effort of these, doing more of these amendments is it's been a find of our audit that we often make our budget. And the way it changes throughout the year, we don't go back and keep it fairly accurate with the budget. And that's been something we want to correct. This year.
Right. And there's a number of things that, so the stuff that, you know, within the code allows me to change within a department, but when it's above and beyond what the department handles specifically, then we come to council to ensure that, but we can discuss all of that. So there's just no problem.
All right, with that, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously to be tabled or tabled unanimously, whatever. All right, item number 12, future agenda items. Anyone have anything they'd like to add?
I have a list.
I would like to look at the process for appealing code enforcement things and communication. I'll send along what I've already done research on, just to kind of look into what other cities have been doing.
Could I make a recommendation on that?
I did write down everybody's that they commented on at the beginning. So if you want me to read that first.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make a comment on, if we do, Councilman Deutsch's recommendation, I had the wonderful opportunity to see our new appeals officer in action. He's an incredible judge. He's really good at handling situations, really equitable. I'd love to get him on the screen for maybe 15 minutes to discuss how he approaches it as well.
And Mr. Wright might be helpful as well. So going back to some of the comments that were made during the last item, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding in terms of code enforcement. There's a lot of different levels of code enforcement. And so when you start talking about the vacant and distressed building ordinance, some of these items take years to litigate and go through the processes. And so it's just a lot of, you know, going through what each one of those items means, as well as like even like a property abatement. And so it'd be nice to just get information on that, just to understand the processes a little bit better. I'm really familiar with them and comfortable with them because it's my job. So I think a lot of the information and how much it costs to do a lot of these things, I'm very comfortable with that information, but I don't think other people
Well,
understand that.
I can give you one example. So the house that went to receivership down here,
Mhm.
our legal bill was 13,000.
And that gets
and that
reimbursed.
did not include the cleanup. That was only the legal bill just to get it to receivership for that property. Some of these others are much more significant.
But we can go into the
Just-
exact, like when reimbursements occur and things in the
Yeah.
item for education purposes.
Then I had the other introduction. Yeah.
Let's have Justin read the list we already got and then.
I wrote a long list because everybody was rattling at the beginning, so I wanted to make sure I tried to catch it all. So outside of the ones that are already written, I had process for code enforcement, which Bruce had brought up. Community promotions grant program, which Matthew had brought up. Some things that are not on here, the solid waste 218, tax measure. Tax measure and what?
The community forum, we were gonna have a community meeting that if people wanted to ask questions.
Oh, it's on the 24th.
That's
Yeah, that
the
one-
downtown one.
Yeah, that one we need to, well, I guess while we're on the subject.
I'll talk to
briefly,
you about it later. It was one of the
We
directions.
need to
we
make
gave for
sure
QA.
maybe that goes off well, because we're gonna have a meeting right before, but a lot of invitations need to be sent out, like,
Now,
if not before July 4th, which they really should be, just after. Like, we need to really be given the opportunity to help reach out and make sure people know what we have, and if we're doing a survey beforehand, that should go out sooner too. So
It's in your utility bill.
okay, perfect.
Okay.
So
So then I had increasing capacity of staffing, which was brought up somewhere during the meeting. I have building official RFP, planning on-call professional services, HR on-call professional services agreement, and then I think majority of that's going to be on July 18th, so just expect a long day. And so I'm open for anything else that I didn't capture.
Yeah, I would like to clarify the increased capacity, because the idea I have is I would like council to consider two options. One is to bring on an additional staff member specifically designed in their role to increase the capacity for the items that are priority to council. I think it may include planning. I know Councilman Casey's been working on conceptual idea. But I want just kind of look at how we handle project management and where are the bottlenecks? How do we ease those up? How do we increase capacity if we have the ability to? Related to that, I do have some concerns with the budget and personnel costs if we take on additional employees. While that's in flux, I would like council to propose a temporary freeze on new hiring until we're out of deficit budgets and we've determined what this new role looks like, or just have that be part of the mix. Kind of keep things stable right now, because I'm concerned about future deficits coming forward. But in my mind, they're related. I don't mean that to be if that seems like something council wants to deal with separately. I would like to see us step back, figure out how we can get more done going forward. Before we make additional moves and expend resources. If there's
Okay.
second.
I think we'll.
We adjourned. Second.
Well, was there a second to mine?
I'll second.
Oh, okay. We had.
I kind of, I.
Didn't hear it.
Moved and seconded
Had to
for those.
do that.
All right, and with that,
probably won't be
ready to
for
adjourn?
July.
So.
Adjourn.
Oh, adjourn.
Adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.
Twice. Two.
Oh, I need to go.
I realized I put in the front of my car.
Yes.
So I had, I know.
I had.
That was one of the discussion points. Thank you. Blake reached out to him today and I haven't heard back yet.
Thanks, Richard.